Hello everybody, and welcome to the Evolution of Hex-A-Gone. Now this final has been in Fall Guys since day one, making it one of the oldest levels in the game. This could have been your first final that you ever played, and this, as far as I know, is the first Hex-A-Gone final that I ever won. So we can take a look here and see how things have changed. Look, instantly the tiles look very different, and they actually kind of sink down as you walk on them, instead of kind of flashing and then disappearing. The whole tile is actually moving. And if you look at the way I play, the way everyone plays Hex-A-Gone now, unless you're a new player, has changed a lot. There's a lot more going on now. If you look at this gameplay back from 2020, you'll see that not really anyone knows exactly what they're doing. Including me. I might be jumping from tile to tile instead of just running across the entire map. But things have changed a lot in terms of gameplay and how you actually win this final since this time a few years ago. And look at that. I've just fallen through a few layers crazy times. I kind of like the aesthetic, actually. It's very simple compared to what we have now. There's no kind of patterns or designs on the tiles. I don't think I've dived more than about 2 or 3 times in this entire final. And now if I was playing, I would have dived many times. And look, there's the old font, the old finish screen as well. And instead of saying winner across the screen, it just says round over. And look, that's my old name, Fall Guy 7061. And this was one of my earliest crowns, as you can see. Look at that. The old Season 1 menu screen. So let's take it on a little bit. This is when I'd unlocked the beanbot lower half, and now we have something much more familiar to what we're used to. I think it looks pretty much the same now, actually. I don't know if the tiles disappear in exactly the same way now, but they've got their patterns, and I think the colours have slightly changed. I think it was a darker blue originally, and I took some very poor decisions there, but still won somehow, and still didn't dive at the end. Remember when people didn't know about diving at the end of a final? But it was still enough. And this was my second name in the game, Cold Dazzling Meme, when everyone had a randomized name. Although I think my first ever name was actually Octagonal Pool still. Then they had to change that because of an issue with Steam, where people could name themselves some very dubious things. So this is how I was playing. This is the next stage of Evolution. This is after I'd unlocked the Gold Witch, everyone's first golden costume. So you can see by this point, I learnt how to jump dive. I wasn't very slow with it, but it was enough, and I still wasn't diving at the end. Can you believe it? Over 444 crowns and still not diving at the end. But that takes us to the modern day, and the full evolution of gameplay in Hex-A-Gone. This is from the most recent Hex-A-Gone Trials gameplay level playlist, and you can see now I play this game in a completely different way. The whole time, I'm looking around the map to see where I need to go next. We're skipping tiles so that I've got more tiles so that I can go around to another part of the map. We're jump diving nice and slowly, occasionally even utilising aspects of coyote time here. It was such a late jump that the tile has completely vanished from below my feet. And then we get that familiar winner screen, and look! I finally unlocked this nameplate as well. The second from last, the penultimate nameplate in the game. Just got that gold one to go. Fantastic. So I've cut off Mr. Broccoli here, and the way that everyone plays this now, everyone kind of knows what they're doing. Very strategically. You have to really look wherever you're going, or you won't stand a chance on Hex-A-Gone anymore. I mean, unless you get lucky. You can still get lucky. So you've got to be looking multiple layers ahead when you're up high, planning, seeing where people are going, seeing which areas have more players than others, how they're moving, and generally have a good kind of mechanical skill at the game. Now, in theory here, I didn't actually play this very well. I should have come over earlier, but this still kind of works out. And there you go, that's how you can win a very close final, just by a perfectly timed dive there. You want to leave it very late, doing a very late dive, and that can often seal a victory. And here, I was looking the whole time up at this section of blue, when I was on the layer above, knowing that this was going to be my safest bet, because it gives me a few tiles to end up with, and it also cuts off the Golden Witch to get us another win. Now, after being the Gold Wolf there, I'm just a regular wolf this time. There's going to be quite a lot of these, because I managed to win many games of Hexagon during this event limited time show thing, you know. So I'm looking, where do I need to go after this? So I cut off this way. I know I've got a bunch of tiles over this way, but there's another bean on the other side. So we're jumping over tiles so that I've got some on the way back, cutting off, but I didn't quite cut off everywhere. But I get very lucky, and everyone else falls in the slime a split second before me. Now this one went crazily well. I don't know how I managed to do this, but if you get a little bit lucky and you're really good at looking below you, and even on the same level as yourself, you can manage to win a game while still on one of the top layers, which is crazy. But I've got a lot better at Hexagon, not since it was released, but in recent times. Now, how will I win this one, you're thinking? So I've made a huge mistake here. I've accidentally dived off the map and landed on the bottom layer, so I decided to cut it all up. Kind of. We've got little holes around the entire map, which makes it easier to cut off certain areas. So we've frightened away this beam near me. And there's a lot of people actually running away, but you can also see shadows above me. That's a very useful tactic to use in Hexagon. See that shadow to the left there? And there he is. He's fallen down. But not in enough time that I couldn't cut him off. So I've actually managed to seal myself quite a large bit of the map here still. See, look, we've got like 20 tiles left. Very lucky. So even though I fell down stupidly early by making an awful dive by accident, I managed to win that one by keeping an eye everywhere. Can you imagine people looking at the shadows above them earlier on when this game first came out to seal the win? Now this one I actually forgot to press record during the beginning, so I fell through the first few layers. But as you saw from the last game, that's not necessarily enough to stop me from winning. And you also just saw there me grabbing the Sonic. Grabbing has become such a huge part of this game. It's not that people didn't do it back in the day, but I don't think people would have known a good way of grabbing in a level like Hexagon. But over the last couple of years, people have learned, and it's become a huge part of the way that we win some of these finals. Now here you can see I've got a nice patch of purple tiles to myself. We're quite high up, but there's almost nothing below. But it's lucky, because the other person has even less than I do. Now I'm going to show you a lot of this round, because it makes a really good example of exactly what I do to try and win these games of Hexagon. Each layer, I'm looking ahead. Not only am I looking at the purple here, knowing how much I have to cut off to get rid of the other players, but I was already looking a layer below at that time. I know where I need to go. I need to cut off the chicken here, so we jump over a few tiles. But the chicken somehow uses Matrix technology to teleport back up, and there's still another bean on this layer, so we're going to have to use some persuasive techniques to get rid of him. You don't always have to grab, sometimes you have to just stand still and be in the way. Also, over time, people have got used to making much bigger jumps. Now, technically, if you're a PC player and you have a very high FPS, also I made a massive mistake here, you can do bigger jumps, because you can do a little bit of a 360 dive, which gives you extra distance, but I almost always play on 60 FPS, even though my screen is 165 Hz, I just had to look at it there. I still pretty much always play this game on 60 FPS, it just runs nice and stable. If you're not aware, I do play on a laptop, and it gets very hot if I run it at too high of an FPS rate. And I feel like you don't need to run the game at 300 to win games, even though it does give a bit of an advantage. It's kind of, you know, it's a little bit cheeky. And look, we've got to cut off the chicken again here. But I didn't cut them off very well, so I've left myself with not that many tiles, but it's enough. Sometimes the wins are very close, and sometimes they're not. Okay, we're still up nice and high here. I realised as I was falling there that I couldn't make it onto the purple. maybe I could have done if I'd had some extra FPS, as silly as that sounds. Wow, can you believe it? The amount of tech that has gone into the evolution of winning a final in Hexagon these days, it's crazy. And the movements, the jumps, the dives, the slow hops. I still see some people doing that thing where they try and jump twice on each tile. That's the easiest thing to grab someone doing. If you do that, it's not only not saving you any time. Hey, look, another huge mistake. Am I going to win this one? Who knows? It doesn't save you any time jumping twice on a tile, and it's a lot more dangerous. It can be something that definitely ends around quickly for you if you mess up. And as I said, it's very easy to grab someone that's doing that and trip them up because they're jumping twice in the time that you would normally only do it once. Yeah, not the best method. But it's okay. Look how many tiles we've got here. But wait, someone's closing in. And they've made it onto my land. Get off. It's my land, I tell you. So I'm looking around the whole map at this point. You can see me tilting that camera, seeing where should I go. I know that person's not jump diving and there's a bunch of tiles over here. But there's still someone else alive. So I skip a few tiles, make sure I've got a lot on the way back. But there's still someone alive. Can they make it over to those other tiles? Not quite. I think they should have been able to, but luckily for me they made a little mistake. It gave me another win. Wonderful. And I was, of course, cosplaying as a new player there. The traditional and perennial pink bean. Always a favourite. And you can see here, I've managed to seal myself an absolutely huge portion of tiles at the top, but I knew there was someone above me, so I've cut off as much as I can. Unfortunately, they still managed to jump over to where I was going, so I've made a bad play here, and I've accidentally left them with a lot of tiles. But the evolution of this game has meant even if you leave someone else with a lot of tiles, you can cut off what's underneath them so that they've got nowhere to land. So you can see here I go around on this yellow, have a little battle with another bean, and I know there's not much underneath that other player, even though they're much higher. There's not much on their side, and they probably can't make a jump over to where I am at the moment. But even so, I play it safe. I jump around, I skip a few tiles, so that if they land, they can't just run over to me easily. And they all fall off. Very satisfying. It's always good to beat someone that's done a lot better than you in a game. I'm going to show a lot of this round as well, because it's a good 1v1. You see the guy with the gold and black and white robot costume? They might appear in another... There we go, they're just over on the right. Just run out of frame. There they are, up and right next to me, the one I just grabbed. That is the $300 costume. Which means it's the one you only get from having a specific Xbox, I think. They did like a weird collaboration where you get a Fortnite skin, and that Fall Guys skin is a Gilded Hunter? Something like that, it's called. And you can only get that from a very special edition Xbox, which costs something like $300. So I did not want to lose to someone who'd effectively spent $300 on a Fall Guys skin. I mean, sure, they might have not had an Xbox before and then got it and then got the skin. But even so, I knew they were a decent player because they've been doing well in the previous rounds here that led up to this final. So I tried as hard as I possibly could here to make sure I always ended up with as many tiles as possible. Now that's all well and good, but you can have more tiles than anyone else on one layer. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. In fact, sometimes it's even bad practice staying up when you should be jumping down to cut off other people. Now I've had a little look around this level, and I've seen there's a lot of players everywhere else on the map. I cut off this person here, just in case they can somehow make that jump. And I've not got many tiles left. There is another island next to me, but that's a tough jump. You see that distance there? But as long as you got a bit of momentum, and you do a little bit of a twist, a little shimmy, you can make those kind of jumps every now and again. But how many tiles does my arch nemesis Mr. $300 costume have? One less than me, so as long as I don't mess up. It's in the bag. A victory for the Golden Penguin. Absolutely wonderful. Take that, $300 costume guy. No hard feelings there. Okay, we're into the next round here, and I am an extraterrestrial egg. Oh, interesting. And you see how I dived there and took out 3 hex tiles all at once? A lot of the time, that would be a mistake and you'd be cutting yourself off of 3 tiles for the price of 1. But sometimes, it's a very valid thing to do. For instance, if you want to cut off someone else, and you want to get rid of a bunch of tiles between you and them very quickly, landing on 3 at once can be incredibly effective. Now I'm still way higher up in the map than everyone else. You ever get a fear of heights in this game? Yeah, sometimes that happens to me. Especially when people take out all of the bottom blue layer before anywhere else. That can get really spooky when you know there's nothing on the bottom layer. This fox here was pretty good, if I do remember. But I'm a robot, and I'm blue, so there's always that going for me. Now there's a bunch of purple down here. Can I cut it off before they get to it? No. Maybe I should have dropped earlier? Would it have made it worth it? Who knows, but I've got a bunch of yellow here. We slowly work through that, and I realise the only blue with no players on it is over to the left here. So I cut off this side, make sure I've definitely cut it off. I know there's a lot more in front of me, and it's not too difficult to jump to. So I stay with my slow jumps and slow dives, and now I tilt the camera around to see how much the other person has to work with. And it's not really that much. So because I've planned ahead here, I've looked around the whole map for a while. I know it's going to be enough tiles for me to win. And the fox falls in the slime. Hey look, I'm a lightning bean. Remember this old costume? I haven't worn this one for ages. But it actually looks really good with the golden face. And at any point, you should be prepared to go back in a different direction on this map. And try and remember what you've already seen so you know where you can go to. Although at any moment's notice, of course, it can all change within seconds. Because there could be someone running around taking it all up. Sometimes you have to have some really quick reactions these days to win. There's another fun old skin. Remember this one? The Scout? I remember when this one came out, I think it was Kudos, but it was like one of the most expensive Kudos skins I've ever seen. I think it was 13,000 each piece. So we cut off the other bean on that side, which keeps me with enough blue to last an entire season of this game, although, as I've just seen on Twitter, the seasons are going to be getting longer. They've confirmed that creative mode will be out in the next season, which we were really hoping for. A little cheeky grab on that bean there, which sends them down a couple of levels. But they've also said that vaulting will continue of the rounds, but they should be changing out the maps each season at least, so that is something. It's not the happiest news that we wanted, but I'm still incredibly hopeful for creative. Next season should be interesting, and I think it's gonna be a make or break kind of scenario. It depends how many levels get unvaulted. It depends if they actually decide to vault Stomping Ground. Let's face it, if Stomping Ground gets vaulted, new best season. Am I right? Let's hope so. I detest that level so much. So we're slow hopping about on the yellow layer here. There's only 2 other beans down there. Now, should I drop down to cut off the person on my side? Looks like I don't have to, because they've fallen off the map all by myself. Which leaves me with probably a little bit more land than the other player. Yes, it does, of course. I did super well in this seasonal event of the Hexagon finals. What's it called? Hexagon Trials? Something like that. Now my Vaporwave Shark is doing pretty well here. We've still got a sizable chunk of purple, but it would have been a false economy to just stay up there. Unfortunately, in trying to cut off this player, I didn't do well, but I did send them away, and there's almost no blue on the bottom layer. So I'm hoping that they have nowhere to land. And my instincts were correct. They might have had more tiles than me on the layer above, but there was nothing below them. Now this Mr. Spock here would not stop running, but annoyingly, apart from that, they were a kind of decent player. They knew what they were doing. But when someone like this just doesn't stop running, it can be really hard to counter. They don't usually win, but they can certainly mess it up for a lot of other players. But we got a nice grab on the fish there. I knew I had to cut off some people. This guy grabs me but then goes the wrong way. Really, they should have probably gone that way as well, but they made a little mistake. And all for my benefit. We don't cut off Mr. KFC here. So I take a quick spin of the camera to see where I need to go. And this is where I decide to go. There's no other players near here. As you're familiar, I can slow jump dive. And I can get each one of these tiles for myself. And I don't even need to use them all up. Everyone else falls into the slime at pretty much the same part of the game. Great! So that leaves us with our final round of the video. I hope it's been an interesting thing. Seeing the evolution of Hex-A-Gone, not only what it looks like, but how it plays. I thought it'd be interesting to show just how you have to play this game now to win on a regular basis. A lot of people do win Hex-A-Gone, but a lot of people think it's luck-based. You know, well, not completely, but that there's a large element of luck. And there really isn't. You can be very consistent with winning Hex-A-Gone. This guy seems to be really consistent on trying to grab me and take me out. So I run away to a big patch of land here. Managed to cut off the other player. Doesn't leave me with a whole bunch of extra tiles, but it's enough to give me some thinking time, which is always nice. It's always nice to have just, you know, like 5 or so tiles to give you enough time to let muscle memory sink in, do some jumps and dives, and spend the rest of that time just looking around. I knew the guy was going to grab me again there, so I spammed my jump to break free from his grabs. Grabbing is not infallible. You can grab someone loads and it might not work if they know exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Unfortunately, the other player there manages to cut me off very well. It leaves me with not much, unless I can get over to this other yellow island. And people are starting to fall into the slime. So maybe I won't even have to drop down on the blue here. I skip some tiles to see where I'll need to land. Realise that neither of these players have a whole lot of blue. But I'm just gonna make sure I've got enough yellow to land on the right bit of the map. So we drop here, and even if they'd made that tile, I would have been one ahead of them. And that secures us the last win of the episode. Brilliant. Once again, hope you enjoyed this. Seeing some crazy techniques and evolutions of how Hex-A-Gone has changed. It's a much harder game than it once was, but it's not luck-based. It requires a lot of skill, a lot of awareness, and a lot of looking around, as well as the occasional grab. And that puts us at over 2,200 crowns for the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.